Thank you, Sean. Thank you to Longview Economic Development Corporation and the Office of the Governor for having us here today. Our business development panel consists of 3 respected leaders in the community and in their field. So first, we have Bill Grams, who is so small. I'm sorry, Brad, you told me I need readers at some point, so I think we're almost there. Bill Graham serves as Managing Director for Sperry Commercial Global Affiliates Graham Group, selling office, retail, multifamily, industrial, and land properties. His focus is in Dallas-Fort Worth and Northeast Texas, including Longview, Tyler, Texarkana, Nacogdoches, and Lufkin. Bill, with his previous company, has achieved the #1 broker position in the state of Texas and #3 broker position in the central region of the U.S. This last year, he was in the top 10 of his national company in production. Bill has also developed and built some of the most innovative projects in Northeast Texas, including office, retail, medical, residential, and multifamily and land developments. Bill's design build firm was also the managing partner for numerous equity partnerships. Bill is a past national director for the National Association of Home Builders, past state director of the Texas Association of Builders, and past president of the East Texas Home Builder Association. He has also served his community in many ways, including 6 years as a board member of CASA and served for 2 years as president of the 6-county CASA, being instrumental in bringing together the Sheriff's Department, Police Department, and Child Protective Service agencies to create the first child advocacy center in his area. Bill's a member of the National Association of Realtors and North Texas Commercial Association of Realtors. Welcome, Bill. We also have Michael Shirley, who is the City of Longview Director of Development Services, and I forgot I'm not supposed to touch this, sorry, and an AICP credential planner from the American Institute of Certified Planners. He has been with the City of Longview for 16 years. In his role as director, he oversees the city planning, transportation planning, building inspection, and code compliance divisions, as well as being the liaison for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee and for 380 economic development agreements. Welcome, Michael Shirley. And finally, we have Brad Bunn. Brad Bunn graduated from the University of North Texas in December of 1990. Goodness, put that in here. With a Bachelor of Business Administration in Strategic Management and Marketing. Since graduation, he worked for the Kilgore College Small Business Development Center as director since May of 1991 and became director of the North Central Texas SBDC in January of 2017. Brad has counseled hundreds of businesses on startup business planning, expansion of existing businesses, and facilitated over $100 million in loans. This experience has earned him classification as a Master Business Development Specialist from the Association of Small Business Development Centers. In 1998, 2002, 2007, and 2016, the Kilgore College SBDC won SBDC of the Year award given by the U.S. Small Business Administration. In 1999 and 2016, Brad also received the coveted National Star Performer Award given by the Association of Small Business Development Centers. This year, at the North Central Texas SBDC, they have already generated $19 million in capital infusion for the center, which has never been reached before in its 30-year history. Brad has also owned and operated many businesses, including two Subway sandwich restaurants, and currently is president and CEO of Rubicon Investments. Brad resides in Denton, Texas, and works with many small business owners on a daily basis. He loves reading, sports, traveling with his family, and being in the great outdoors. He has a wife named Sherry and one son, Braden. Welcome, Brad Bunn. So with that, we are going to dive into our questions, and I'm going to move back here, and we'll just share those microphones because I don't think this one's supposed to leave right here.
How's that working? Woo, that's loud. I probably don't need this.
You probably don't.
I'm known to be loud.
All right, guys, so we will dive right in, and Bill, we are starting with you. So if an entrepreneur or small business owner is looking to lease or purchase a commercial space in Longview, walk us through the process of working with a broker.
Well, maybe the best way to answer that's a couple of examples. most of you probably work with brokers even in a residential type situation, so it's really not that different, just different products. We had a group out of Tennessee actually just recently that called us, and they kind of had, we really appreciate like a really detailed what we call buying criteria. And these guys, you know, they have $1 billion company, so they're huge. They're not small business like me. But the idea is they give us a really good list of basically what they're looking for. This was an interesting one because they had a need for maybe two ground up, like brand new buildings. And then in the interim, they needed, and they're already here actually, and in the interim, they need some lease space in maybe an existing building. And then they even had another qualification that if we could find them a property that's already, you know, existing that would fit, then we could take a look at what would be required to get that within their budget. So basically, we look for buying criteria, and they're all different. Of course, there's all different type property products. We had another group yesterday, actually, out of kind of on the East Coast. They do a lot of tax credit deals. We're working 2 of those right now that should close at the end of this year. But this is a whole new group, and they have a real specific criteria where they get these GIS-like studies done, and they literally gave us 6 counties to work probably about 8 different deals, and they actually give us these census tracts, which you all know you're part of a census, that really define exactly where they really want to be, because they have ways of knowing that if you're in those particular areas, their odds of getting their tax credits are favorable. So basically, I guess when we're working with these folks, we basically just are looking for as much detail as we can get. As you all know, there's a lot of real estate out there, so the more detail we get, whether it's buying or leasing, the better. We're just looking for a real strong buying criteria, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and tell us too, just from a residential real estate broker, if they're wanting to find a space to lease or buy, do they just call you directly? Do they call off the sign?
Yeah,
what is the best way
absolutely.
for them to do that?
Well, we're all good friends now since we're all here, so just ask for my card. We'll be glad to help you. But no, you know what? This is the best social media person in the world. You can't go a day without seeing what she's been up to, and I'm probably not as good at that. But we do have signs all over. Well, and by the way, we've kind of refocused in the Northeast Texas. When I first joined Sperry Van Ness, which is different now from Sperry Commercial, that was mostly focused in Dallas-Fort Worth, or that market, even though we work all over the nation. But we've got signs up, and you can Google me and find me. But they basically just give us a call, and we you know, that's the part about my job I love. We're always meeting new people, always getting new challenges and to work with. So,
and Michael, you can chime in on this also, but back to Bill before, sorry.
All right, gave it up.
Kind of walk us through the process as far as the importance on working with the city, the importance of once they found a place that they want to buy or lease, on getting inspections done, kind of what the contract to closing time frame is, just kind of the basic things.
That's a really important part of what we do, and we love working with the city. I mean, you'll hear people with their little complaints about codes and those kind of issues, but we truly, I mean, their support in my mind, and I love it when I have an opportunity to go down there and visit with them, because there's a lot of professional guys down there that can be super helpful if you just utilize them. But you know, if you're going to get into this group that we're looking at may have it's about a 4,000 square foot, what we call second generation lease space. It's going to require a pretty good amount of renovation work, and that's going to mean we've got to go down to Michael's group and get a building permit to get that done, and then go through that whole process and eventually get a certificate of occupancy, so you're allowed to basically move in. So that's all really important. And as far as timing on contracts, it's very common in our world to hear a 30-30, which basically is we got 30 days of what we either call due diligence or an inspection period, and then 30 days to close. Those things move that's just a general rule. Like everything, it's all negotiable. We had another deal just recently, matter of fact, it should close next week, a multifamily deal where it was a super wanted property. It had a really high cap rate, which we don't have to get into all that, but it's basically a really good deal. And so a lot of people wanted it, so we had this guy on the West Coast calls up and says, I want to do a 10-day inspection with a 30-day close. Well, what he doesn't know is that I'm old. And we've kind of seen that thing before. It is good, but that was just his way of tagging the property and making sure he had control of it. And then he began, and that is a really good way to get in the first position. But then he began to start kind of renegotiating and trying to push deadlines back. And we were just very kind and professional as we could be, and just said, look, no more negotiating, no more extensions. You're welcome to close per contract or not. But generally speaking, we're a 30-day. So it's a total of 60 to get a commercial deal done for the most part.
Okay. And Michael, in working with the city, if someone wants to start a business in Longview, where do they start and what are the correct steps to take with the city?
Yeah, and I think it's key, like Bill said, coming in kind of knowing what you want and what you need so that when you come visit with us, we can make sure that we kind of help you in the right direction. And one of the things that we try to do, and we do a lot of pre-development meetings so that we can kind of get you headed in the right direction and kind of ask the questions that maybe you don't know to ask, because we deal with code and zoning and stuff like that every day. Most of you guys don't. You're looking at whatever business you're in or whatever business you're wanting to go in. You're focused on that part of it. But really the key first step is coming and visiting the Development Services Department, setting up a pre-development meeting, even if you just have an idea on paper. So that way we can make sure that you're looking in the right areas. Because really the first key is looking and making sure you're appropriately zoned. And, as we all know, zoning is a key for our community to make sure that we have appropriate uses located and compatible near each other, and those kind of uses that are nuisances, where they need to be, and make sure that we have appropriate spots for them. But that's usually where people kind of get off on the wrong foot, is they kind of go at it on their own. And really it's important to get out there and get you a professional, whether it's a real estate broker or somebody who can help guide you through all the different nuances of finding a location. Once you've got a location picked out, if you're looking at doing any kind of renovations, any kind of ground up building or finish out construction, that's a whole different process as well. And yeah, you can kind of do it kind of on your own, but it really goes a lot smoother when you have professionals involved, and we can all kind of work together on your behalf to kind of make sure that you're headed in the right direction.
What would require getting a permit? Are there certain things they could do at their spot that they don't need to come talk to you about?
Yeah, and really, if you're going into an existing location that's pretty well finished out, all you got to do is go in, paint, put up a sign. That's really just coming in and getting what's called a certificate of occupancy, and that's where we come in. First thing, make sure the zoning's appropriately. We'll come out and do an inspection. Just make sure that it's safe from a building and fire safety standpoint. And then that's where you'll get your certificate of occupancy. Pretty much everything is going to require a permit. Like I mentioned, signage, there's sign permits for that. Any kind of construction is going to require permitting. Real basic stuff like just painting and cosmetics probably doesn't require permitting, but anytime you're going to get into demoing in an old, even moving walls and things, and you get into the asbestos requirements and so forth. So the best thing to do though is, if you're not sure, come and visit with us and we can go over your scope of project and guide you whether or not you're going to need permits for that. And
aren't there certain days of the week that you'll have those meetings?
Yes, we typically set aside Thursdays for our pre-development meetings, and that way we have a representative from each group, from our building department, our engineering group. They kind of set aside that day to be available to meet with individuals. Certainly we can schedule those on other days as needed.
Okay, back to Bill. Explain to us on the leasing side what some of just these basic vocabulary terms mean. Say triple net. If you have a lease that says it is triple net or isn't, what does this even mean, and what is negotiable? I mean, I think everything's negotiable. I think you would agree.
Absolutely, everything's negotiable in real estate. I mean, literally. But there's just some real. There's 1,000 different probably type leases, and sometimes people that don't get help make up their own, which generally gets us in trouble. But just your real basic leases are, you may just have what we call a gross lease, which is basically you're going to write a check once a month to your landlord, and that's really all you're going to pay. He's going to pick up everything, all the other expenses, utilities, taxes, insurance, the whole bit. If you get into like a triple net lease, don't let that sound like it's a big deal. It's basically all that means is you're going to have a base rate for whatever amount of space you have. Let's just say you had a 10,000 square foot space and you're in a 100,000 square foot building. Well, the triple net part is you're going to pay 10%. In other words, that's your pro rata share of the building of all those other expenses, taxes, insurance, and basically all other operating expenses of the building. That would mean you're even paying 10% of the electricity that does your lights in the parking lot. So, and that's structured that way so that the landlord, as time goes on, if you have a 10-year lease, his taxes may go up, his insurance may go up, and so it just kind of shares that burden with the tenant. And then you can also have like a base lease, which is basically a X amount of dollars per square foot for your lease space with a base year of, say, 2018, and then you go check expenses over 2019. It's kind of like a triple net, but it basically is you pick up certain expenses, your pro rata share of certain expenses as you go forward. So leasing can get, sometimes leases get a little bit more complicated than you need. We've seen, 60-page leases where I just think sometimes they're a little bit overburdened. We also have a company represented a whole lot down in Houston called Boxer Property, and they have I think around 21 million square feet of space now around the country, and their lease, it's mostly smaller spaces, and they have a 3-page lease. It's kind of like buying a big piece of furniture that makes it real simple and easy. And of course, as brokers, we love those. Simple.
So tell us, Bill, in working with potential small business owners relocating to Longview, what general questions do you get about our area?
There's always a lot of questions, and so if you're in our business, you kind of have to know what's going on in your part of the world. But let's just say if you're an industrial group coming to town, you're going to want to know, or maybe even like not long ago we had a data group that came in, and so they're always kind of curious about how your workforce, how strong your workforce is, and that's why we love working with Ledco because they keep up with good data on that. What your workforce cost, and quite frankly, we're pretty cheap in this part of the world. They like to know what housing costs are if they're bringing in a bunch of employees, and then if they're a big manufacturing group that requires like a lot of water in their manufacturing process, they're going to want to know what the city's capacity is for that, and then all that water is going to go into the sewers, so they want to make sure we've got capacity for that, depending on how big they are. And we don't have any of those issues as far as I know. We're still very strong in that regard. So they just want to know kind of generally about what your area brings, and lifestyle is a big part of that. I mean, we had a case with one of our best developers here in town. Had a group. This is several years ago, but he had a nice industrial building. He had this group from Germany that had come to Longview 3 different times. That he just thought he had them, and all of a sudden they get real quiet. And in our business, when it gets real quiet, that's a bad thing. That's why I stay loud. But anyway, this group all of a sudden just kind of disappeared. He tracked them down and said, "What is going on? What happened?" Well, they just decided to take that whole company with all these employees to Waco. And so his comment, of course, is, "What the wacko is that all about?" And they said, "You know what? It's lifestyle. We felt like there was just more going on down there for our employees. More. They got the big river. They got the university. They got games. They got stuff going on. So that's really important. When anytime we all see some groups trying to create more activity in the city of Longview, that's good for all of us. I mean, we don't get into, I could go off on that for 30 minutes, but it's just, lifestyle is important. If you're bringing industry and bringing employees to this city, and we're doing good, but we could surely do better in that regard.
And Michael, what role does the city of Longview play in business recruitment?
We get this question a lot. I know council gets this question a lot too. Hey, why don't y'all get and name any of the big companies that you see in some of the more urban areas? Why don't you bring them to town? And one of the things that the city doesn't do is we're not actively pursuing those companies. Now, Leadco and other groups are, and that's part of what they do, and we work with them. But part of our function is just making sure that once they come in, that we're a resource for them to help them get their business here, and go through any of the construction process or siding processes. And so that's kind of where the city's role is. Once Leadco or any of the brokers kind of have them on the hook, then that's where we work, and we try to get them information as far as quality of life, and that's important, and try to get them all the information. We work through incentive packages and things and try to seal the deal and get them here. But it's our role is pretty limited in the recruitment process.
And Bill, this question's for you, but I love Brad's opinion also. But in working with commercial real estate and in the SBDC and all of your travels and everything also to bigger areas, how do you compare downtown Longview currently and the potential for growth to, say, like a Deep Ellum type place, or possibly trends in other cities that you see that are making them more attractive?
Well, if you're all from Longview and all work here, I'm assuming, and you know, we have done a tremendous job, and I say we, the government in our area here, of converting downtown. I know it's taken like 10 years or something to get it done, but you know, we have a beautiful palette for downtown with all the new utilities and streets and landscaping. All that's awesome. I mean, it really is. I think we're sitting there poised for a major new growth and development down there. Comparing it directly to Deep Ellum, if those of you that may know that area, you know, the only comparison I can think of is maybe 25 years ago. I can remember when that was a particularly dead area, and you know, it just started with just some little small museums, some small art things going on, some small little restaurants, and we're studying a new development that will happen out here on 259 in the Loop. That's called Work Smarter, and it's basically, has anybody ever heard of WeWork? I'm curious about that. Has anybody ever heard of WeWork? Nobody? It's basically, there's a couple in here, but it's basically kind of how you share office space and a kind of a common, it's kind of like a Starbucks on steroids, but we also have individual private offices. Well, I was in Deep Ellum because they have one there, and I was noticing, you know, that's just such a laid back area. Like all the couches are velvet, and it kind of reminds me of the 60s, and then you step over into like Uptown, and it's like super corporate, super expensive, and you know, this deal we're talking about is going to be kind of in the middle. But as far as downtown goes, man, I think we've got a tremendous opportunity to watch that growth, and I don't think I'm saying anything out of confidence, but there are a couple of buildings down there, one of which we represent, that should close just in a few months. That will be, it's a 6-story Heritage Tower building, and that's going to be converted into a multifamily thing, believe it or not. That building's been there since like 1936, I think, and but that's going to be so good for Longview. It just brings people. We just simply need more people downtown. We sold another building on the other side of the courthouse to this group you may know called Wellness Point, and that brought like 40 employees downtown. They're only there during the day, different from, you know, this multifamily thing, having people there all night. But that's what we need. We just need more people, and I think that's going to happen kind of in slower pieces as we develop, because success will breed success, just like it does in everything you do. And as we continue to watch those things happen, I really believe our downtown will come back. So.
Brad and Michael, too, if y'all have anything.
Yeah, and I would like to echo that. I think, you know, we just completed a small area plan for downtown, and that was really the key focus, and we need critical mass of people that are living downtown. You know, the daytime traffic is great, but that doesn't sustain downtowns. And so, you know, we've got the Petroleum Building, and then Heritage Tower that's going to be kicking off. So I think, you know, the city has put in the work on the front end with all the infrastructure improvements over the last 10 years. And so now it's kind of time to see that private investment come in and really take off. And I think downtown is really poised to be great like some of these other communities.
Who's been around Longview for more than 40 years? Who remembers Sears downtown? Who remembers Dillard's? Okay. So, what'd you say? Fedway's. I remember that too. Who remembers Dress and Gaudy used to be downtown? Okay. I've been around the boom, the decline, and now the resurgence of the downtown area. And from working all around the state, and especially Denton. I lived in Denton, Texas back in the 80s, Melanie. And their downtown was dead, and now it has a resurgence. Also, who's been to McKinney lately? That's really booming. Okay, but one thing Longview needs to really consider and think of and put into the plan initially is parking. Parking has to be a key, and also safety. I think the safety thing is worked out. I'm not so sure the parking part is worked out. If the parking is provided, people will come. There's a little bit of a discussion every Friday or Saturday night. Can we find a spot? Well, we have to park too far off. And I know that these cities, Denton and McKinney, have committed some resources to provide that parking and to put 2- and 3-story type parking. I think if you work on that as the city, I think you'll see a huge resurgence downtown. And the safety part is already taken care of. Thank you.
We're going to move to SBDC in just a minute, but Michael, did you have anything else to add about incentives or anything we missed on the city?
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that people come to us and say, well, what incentives does this city offer for my business? And you know, from the small business standpoint, we don't just have a lot of incentive programs. You know, LeadCo does have incentives that they offer when you're talking about primary job creation. You'd mentioned earlier one of the areas that I oversee are 380 development agreements. A lot of it depends on the business and what type of business it is, where it's going. Some of that's kind of case by case. Look to see if it fits in with one of our strategic planning areas. You know, like if you're talking about the downtown area and it's kind of like a catalyst development, obviously the city's going to be more interested in looking and partnering, and that's really what our incentives are focused on is partnerships. You know, public-private partnerships is kind of a buzzword, and that's where we kind of look to participate with incentives is how can we partner with businesses that are going to be catalyst developments in strategic areas, whether it's primary job creation in downtown areas, or even in areas where maybe there's the infrastructure is outdated or undersized. We partner with companies to upsize and install new infrastructure. So that's really where we fit in as far as the incentive process goes.
Okay. All right, Brad, showtime for you.
Okay.
All right. I worked with Brad for 5 years, so that's why there's a little bit of the back and forth. In a good way. It's all love. Give us a general overview of what the Small Business Development Center is, how it's funded, and the goals and missions of the program.
Okay. Well, first I want to say, Melanie,
Okay.
when I first spoke with Melanie and LeadCo about participating, I knew if Melanie was involved, I needed to be involved. I just want to tell each of you, and no embarrassment to you, Melanie, but you could plant her in any state, any town, and she's a star anywhere you go.
Thank you.
So she's something great, and Longview needs to keep somebody like that and develop that. And but going to the question, Melanie.
You can keep going with that if you want.
I'll throw a few more in as we go.
Yeah.
But the Small Business Development Center was created over 30 years ago. And it was a partnership program with the Small Business Administration and local hosts. And local hosts could be a university, it could be a community college, it could be a chamber, it could be an economic development. It's different in other states, other cities. But in this area, it was connected with a community college. In fact, in all of North Texas, it's connected with a community college system. And kind of what we do, and as I look out in the audience, I see many people that we worked with over the years. So you could, even better yet, say what the SBDC did for you or how they helped you. But it has evolved. Initially, it was basically just working with startup type people, and as we evolved and new administrations came on board, you know, every 4 years we might get a new mandate about some of our goals that we have to create. But currently, it's more about capital infusion, what kind of loans we can generate, new business starts, how many businesses we can start, and also job creation. That's really big. There's two other ones. They're kind of internal goals that wouldn't matter to anybody out here, but really we're trying to work with the economic viability of developing our area that we're located in, the counties that we're given to service.
So if a person has made the decision to start a business, should their first step be creating a business plan? And if so, what are the steps in doing so?
That's a great question. It depends on the person. Did you say start business or just, okay.
Either way, yeah.
Absolutely, if there needs to be planning, and that's why the SBDC is so important. We see everybody that comes in to see us generally has a lot of questions, and the SBDC can help answer some of those. Also, I know we've worked with the city before on sending them over there on Thursday to walk through the planning process, kind of take some of the headache out of starting a business. But business plan is something that everyone should think of, whether it's really a 250-page plan or a 5-page plan. You need to have some type of plan. And I'm looking at a lot of you. I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs always have a mindset. They're always thinking. They're always spinning. I'm looking at Joycelyn out there. She's always got great ideas. And sooner or later, entrepreneurs need to go in a path. And that's kind of where the SBDC can come in and help you go through that path.
I'm sure one of the first questions you get is about access to capital. And I remember when I worked at the SBDC, everyone would call and ask for that free money. Where's the grant money?
I've got my checkbook out.
Exactly. It's a Brad Bunn account. Can you give us a broad overview on access to capital? I know we're going to have a session later on that, so just kind of a broad overview and different types of funds that are available.
That's a great question, too. 20, 30 years ago, it was a little more limited access to capital. Those things are evolving now. There's more than banks that you can go to. There's more than friends and family. People go to credit cards. I don't really recommend that, but there's all kinds of ways you can go, and some of the social media things have developed, like crowdfunding in the last few years. There's a couple of online places you can go, like Strategies for Small Business, Lift Fund, Axion Texas. Axion Texas is more or less a collateral-based lender, which is a little different than your local bank. In some cases, they'll give you money if you have collateral in a car. I know we work with, for example, a couple of Mary Kay people who just needed $5,000. Well, we took the collateral on their car, actually walked outside, took a picture of it, sent it to them in Dallas, and 2 days later they had $5,000 put into their account. So those are different kinds of ways that you can do it. Your local bank, or your relationship with your bank is something you should always explore, and that's something the SBDC, you might want to come in before, because we can talk about your credit. Do we need to kind of build that up? We can talk about what your personal financial statement looks like. Are you really able to do it this way yet? And that all depends on the different ways that you can access money. Also is the rate that's going to be determined too, and I think they'll probably talk about that later.
And it is free to come to the SBDC.
It's free to come to the SBDC always.
I'm sure over the years you have seen some wild business ideas come through your door. I know you've mentioned to me in the past, for example, just because someone likes to cook doesn't necessarily mean that they need to open up a restaurant. What would you advise someone who has a passion for their craft but not necessarily a business mind?
Well, I've seen everything over the years, trust me. I met the man who invented cold fusion. Does anybody know what cold fusion is? Okay, you could generate electricity through water and power, and when we couldn't help him anymore, he released all that information to the Middle East. So now the Middle East has cold fusion and the oil and gas. So I've seen every type of person come through my door. Read me the second part of that question again, Melanie.
What would you advise someone that maybe just really likes to do something but doesn't really know how to turn that into a business?
Okay, that's why you come to the SBDC. I've got sad stories too. I have a lot of retiree type people that have come in and had an IRA or all their retirement and wanted to plow it into, for example, a VHS store, right when VHS stores were kind of going out. And so that's why you want to come into the SBDC, so we can kind of work with you on that. Determine if it's a kind of a feasible type business operation. Does it generate enough money? I've talked to multiple people who it just never cash flows. You know, if something never cash flows and you're putting all your money into it, all your retirement into it, you're taking a loan out, you need to have some kind of profit. Otherwise, it's not worthwhile. And you could be better off working at a fast food restaurant, making more than $100 a month. than what we can show that you can do with a cash flow. So developing a plan, coming in, working with it, letting us kind of run those numbers for you to help determine is it feasible is the first place.
What do you think is the number one mistake that small business owners make?
Not proper planning. That's the first thing. People like to jump into it, especially entrepreneurs. They always have ideas. We like to do the planning part with you, where you come in, you talk to us about it, we look at the feasibility of it, we work that out through a cash flow, through a business plan. So proper planning is always the key. Proper marketing, and that's where someone like Melanie is just an expert. She did one of our first conferences, and she brought Drew Pearson into town. How many people came to that, Melanie?
It was packed at my cob.
It was 400 plus. I mean, you have to market. But when I saw her do that, I knew that she understood the marketing piece, and that's very important. You can have a great idea, but you have to let people know about that idea. You have to market properly. So all these things have to be thought out and developed and planned and then implemented.
May not have known who Drew Pearson was, but I knew.
Does anybody know who Drew Pearson is?
I do now.
Okay.
I was more Michael Irvin.
She didn't know who he was, but she loved him after that day.
I did.
Right?
Yeah, we were good friends after. Talked for at least a week. I think we've got about 4 minutes left, so I wanted to just ask one last question to each of you. Bill, you've been a successful real estate broker for many years. Michael, you're an incredible wealth of knowledge for small businesses in so many city arenas. And Brad, as a business owner yourself and SBDC director for over 25 years.
28.
Oh, good Lord. She keeps going up. What is the best piece of advice that each of you can give to someone wanting to start a business?
Y'all go first.
Well, I'm so sorry. We were finding the mic. What's the very
Best
last
piece of advice that you could give someone wanting to start a business?
Don't be afraid to fail. I've had really good years, and I have completely failed as well. And that's what I love about small business people is most of you really aren't afraid to fail. So don't be afraid. And my name's Bill Graham. It's kind of like Billy Graham. So if you don't mind me getting a little spiritual with you, I'm going to jump in your pew for just a minute. If that bothers you, see me after the break when we talk about that. But, spend some time early in the morning. And I know that's hard for a lot of us because we just got to go. I mean, I can go anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours to zero time. But spend a little time getting yourself centered in the morning. Read the Word, pray, think about, just take a few minutes, think about what can I do for somebody else today. It's just amazing how that will center you to a place where when all the stuff starts hitting during the day, we all have financial issues, we all have problems, we have contracts blowing up, but when you've got that good center inside of you all day long, it just doesn't matter. That peace and joy, you just don't get anywhere else. And and I'll do this in 30 seconds, there's a guy at a Gateway in Southlake, if you've ever heard of that huge church. They have a business ministry, and they've got this little CD thing. I can't remember the name of it exactly, but it's business development, which is very appropriate for today. But it's kind of basically all about giving your business to the Lord. I know that may be a little bit contrary to some of your thinking, but you can't find a better CEO than working with with the good Lord. I mean, I've had a pre-Jesus life. And you don't want to go back to that part of the world. But when you get centered, I know I'm not the only one in the room that had that. But when you get centered and you get Him on your side, this particular CD, it takes a couple hours to get through it, but it basically suggests that you give your first part of the year, and this is the important part, to the Lord, where you go literally for maybe a week or 3 or 4 days, whatever you can afford to do. Like I do it January, literally right after the first of the year because it's usually so dead. I go to Galveston, I go down there just to pray, fast, and then literally just try to hear from the Lord and plan your whole year. And then come back 2 different times during the year, get away by yourself for a day or maybe 2 and go through those notes and see what you're doing right, maybe what you're doing wrong, and see if you need to adjust. But I'm just telling you that most of us, and I was horribly guilty of this, you never just sit down and take a minute, or I say a minute, I'd like you to sit down and take a week if you can, to just be by yourself and think and write. I mean, we kind of, with the digital world we're in now, we don't really take the time to do those things. And I just think that's so important. It's made a tremendous, I think I'm on my 4th year now doing that. It's made a tremendous difference in my life. So that's my getting in your pew for the morning.
Michael?
Man, I don't know if I can follow that up.
No, I'm like,
set
drop
the bar
the mic.
high. The key, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's lots of resources out there. We understand, from the city's perspective, we're a resource. We're not just the regulatory entity. We understand that people don't do what we do every day and that they're business owners. They know that business. Don't be afraid to come and ask us for help. That's what we're here to do. We want to make sure that you get off on the right foot. Many stories out there where people come in after they've already gotten started and, maybe they've signed a lease or started construction without permits and, they've created an issue and they've wasted a lot of money and they just didn't really have anybody on their side. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Find professionals that can help you. There's lots of them out there, and that'll get you started on the right foot.
Well, it's hard to follow up. I should have started that. But the number one thing I can say is never, ever give up. You can never give up. I know Debbie and Joycelyn, these are people that probably you felt like it 100 times, but you never gave up. You were persistent. And you believe in yourself even when other people don't. If you're somebody that gives up easily and loses faith easily, don't go into business because it's rough, okay? It's a rough challenge, and everybody will tell you how you can't do it. Even if I don't believe in you, you need to believe in yourself because I've been proven wrong through 30 some odd years of working with small business owners. So believe in yourself, be persistent. And I love it about what you said, reflect. Go back and reflect because that gives you time to plan for the next year and upcoming things too. You kind of need to renew because you can burn out. Trust me, every business owner out there knows you can burn out. Don't burn yourself out. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you to each of you. This has been an incredible panel, and LECO did a great job of choosing you. So I think that's all we have. Do we have time for Q&A? Okay. Sure. Any questions? Anybody has questions? Are there any questions?
Don't be afraid.
When you mentioned earlier that, no, I think he can hear me.
He said don't be afraid. She's going to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Go for
I've
it.
heard several times about the lifestyle changes needed in this area or where we're lacking compared to other places. To me, Waco doesn't sound better than Longview, but
I'm a horn. I totally agree.
I'm wondering, what do we need? And then you did talk about the housing downtown, but in general, what do we not have that somebody else does have? What do we need to be
That's a super. Can y'all? Well, I don't know if you. I'm so loud you can probably hear me. But that is an unbelievably deep and good question that really needs to be addressed. It makes a huge difference in an economy, especially for what we call a tertiary market like Longview. And man, I can open up a can of worms by bringing this up, and I'm good at that. So remember when we had the big deal about the amphitheater? Does everybody remember that in the paper a few times and all that? So I'm a huge proponent of that. I think that should happen. But that's just we just need activity, things to do. I mean, I'm a product of kind of I'm 90 years old, but I mean the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I swear it seemed like there was more to do in Longview, Texas in the 80s than there is right now. And that's I know, and don't let me crush the town though, because I love it. There is a lot going on, and I think we just need to build on it. I can't tell you how many times, being in the real estate business, I've had people in Longview say, you know what? There's nowhere to go if I just want to go drink a beer, have a hamburger, take my dog and my children and be outside to do that. We have very limited space for that. So by the way, we're working on one of those. A group out of Houston's coming up. Again, the Loop, I'm not trying to get a shameless plug, but the Loop in 259, that's the concept though. It's kind of like a truck yard, if you've seen that in Dallas, but it's got a little retail mix with it. But the concept is you come out there on a Friday night or Tuesday night, bring your dog, bring your family. There'll be a little stage, for some live music, and then there's grassy areas for the kids to play. There'll be a fence around it for code, but there's a pond out there as well, or a pretty little area with lights. I mean, it's just kind of something fun to do, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Yeah, it does need to be family friendly. I mean, we just need a little bit more areas like that where we can go play. And to me, again, I know the amphitheater kind of got derailed. I think it was kind of, quite frankly, a little bit political, as all things get. But when I went up to Rogers, where we were modeling that after that amphitheater up there, man, that was the most beautiful facility. And it you know, it doesn't work all year long, but just imagine that sitting out there close to the interstate, wherever it goes. The land part gets controversial, but wherever it goes, can you just imagine everybody from Shreveport, from Tyler? You know, we have I didn't get this somehow worked in for you, but we have what we call a retail trade area that's actually defined by a $25,000 study, I think, with Ledco, that we have 411,000 people in our retail trade area. Nobody really gets that. I was at ICSC in Vegas not long ago, and that's where we actually promote that quite a bit to bring, again, when you're bringing in national companies and you say we got 80,000 people and I see it, they're like, okay, great, it was fun seeing you, I got to go. But but if you promote that, and then again, the more lifestyle we get, and the more activities we get, the better off we're going to be able to sell it. That was a long.
And I think with that, when we do have the different events and things that come up, we have to support them, because that, you know, when we have these events and have different businesses that come up, we've got to show them the support and show them that that our community will stand behind that, so others will come behind them.
So like the music festival that's coming up.
Exactly.
Those kind of things where you can take your dog and kid.
Yeah, the downtown concerts are a great example. I think that's awesome. And the truck yard, what do they call it? Truck Friday?
Downtown
What's it
Live.
called?
Downtown Live every Friday.
Yeah, they bring the trucks down there as well. We just need to support that and kind of keep the community moving, so.
All right, any other questions before we move on?
There's one back there unless he's forgotten it.
I think he said he was going to hold it till later, so. All right. What we're going to do is take a quick networking break, and then at the end of that, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes with our next session, but it'll be split in two, so you can stay in here for the marketing session, or you can go just across the hall for the other breakout if you prefer. Thank you very much to our participants. Let's give them a round of applause.